Women who spent 2 nights waiting to fill up the jerry can were going home being beaten by their husbands because they're saying, where have you been? The people over there were just saying water is basic. And all of a sudden, we have a name. We have a pump mechanic that went to repair a well, and they said, don't touch it. She's like, why? She goes, because it's possessed. Organizations spend millions of dollars bringing in consultants to drive home the culture of their business. We are creative, or, we are this or whatever. Drive home, we are good. And the best way to do that is...
I think you'll really enjoy this episode about Water is Basic. This nonprofit empowers women through business to solve the water crisis in South Sudan. A former pastor and a businessman through his education, you'll definitely want to hear from Steve Roese. He shares how they raised over $500,000 in just a few months, how a simple pivot in their messaging catapulted their donation revenue, and how you can instill your corporate values throughout your organization, so it's embedded in the DNA of your business. Take a listen.
All right, so Steve, tell me about what's led you here. Why do you do what you do?
I get that question all the time. Why do you do what you do? And how can I do what you do? Which are kind of the same question. I would say it's by accident. I went to business school wanting to be a big success and started meeting big successes and just came to a conclusion in life I wanted to do something a little more meaningful, which led me down all kinds of paths. But how I got into water, which is kind of crazy, because along that journey, a friend of mine needed a board member. And I said, sure, I'll be a board member on your organization. And then some years later, he said, hey, we're doing a reconciliation meeting in this country called Sudan that's been at war for 55 years. Would you like to observe? I mean, who turns that opportunity down? And while I was there, they said, hey, could you lead us in a week of brainstorming? We've just got peace. We're all unified. We're leaders. Can you help us figure out what to do? And to be honest with you, I had no idea how to help people figure out what to do in the most broken nation on earth after 55 years of war. But I could set up a place that broke down their barriers and let them get creative. And at the end of the week, when they're sharing all their goals and all this excitement came out about building schools and farm co-ops, this little old man raised his hand. And in Africa, when an old man or old woman raises their hand, everything stops and you listen. And he said, why would we do any of these ideas? Building hospitals, building schools, building farms, important things after 55 years of war. So why would we do that if all our people are dying of dirty water? And I've never been in a room where 40 leaders all were in agreement before, and they were at that moment. I thought, if I don't do something with what I just experienced, shame on me. So I went back home and started telling people, and people responded. That's how I got here. I'm not a hydrologist. I really don't understand water. I just understand people.
I see. Wow. What was that like for you to be in the room?
To be in the room for the reconciliation or for the whole thing?
For the reconciliation. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that was super surreal. Because, first of all, I'll be honest with you, I had no clue there was a country named Sudan. That stupid American me. Here I am in this place where they've had to bring people to Uganda from the north of Sudan and the south because they still, even in peace, can't cross the border. And you're seeing people grab each other and hold each other because they haven't seen each other since they were 11 years old because they couldn't pass this border. And yet they were friends as children. And then they're having to forgive each other because they hated each other during this war. I don't even know how to describe what that feeling was. It was just an out-of-body experience to see, to know that 55 years of war, 25% of the population was killed, half the population was displaced. It led to the 92% illiteracy rate, no roads, no electrical system. We're talking a broken country. I didn't know they existed. And then to hear each of these people share their stories and the pain that they experienced, and then to forgive each other, and then to immediately turn to what can we do together to make a difference. Yeah, that's a once in a lifetime deal.
It sounds so surreal.
It is.
Yeah, it's hard to even contextually imagine what 55 years of war would look like and what that does to a community, to a nation.
What it does is that you wind up with people, and South Sudan broke off of Sudan in 2011, became the newest nation on earth, and they get to have a presidential election, and they actually immediately moved into their own civil war. I say that to say 55 years of war is enough generations, like 3 generations in, of people who don't know that there's another solution to any kind of conflict but a gun. They don't even understand that you can sit down and peacefully negotiate and discuss and figure things out.
Because it hasn't happened.
They haven't seen it. They've never experienced it in 3 generations. I mean, we're talking since 1955.
Yeah.
Before I was born. And I'm 60. So it's really hard to imagine. I think a lot of people understand what happened in Soviet Russia, with all those years of communism, and that there were certain things that people didn't understand, and they had to reteach them. Same thing here. What does it mean to have you say something that offends me and not think AK-47 first?
Right. What does it mean to be civil and try to work together for something?
Yeah. We come from cultures where it's the opposite. If you were to say something really annoying to me right now, my thought wouldn't be, after this, I'm going to go get a gun. It would be, after this, I'm going to say, hey, that was offensive. And you say, oh, tell me about that. So reworking that from the inside out is part of what we do.
I remember, so when we had coffee the other day, you were talking about the first time that you helped build a well, and then you came back a year later.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
You mean where I felt like an idiot? That was good thinking and good desires gone kind of bad in that we came to a community that had no water, and we drilled a water well. And when I came back a year later, it was in the middle of the dry season, so it was super hot, 120 degrees. Not even bugs are alive, It's so hot. And truthfully, you can sleep outdoors without a mosquito net, bug free. That's how hot it is. And I go to visit this well. I'm so excited to see it. And I think I sent you a picture of it, just jerry cans, which are these bright yellow 5-gallon cans that everybody uses to collect water, in lines. And each line may have 300 jerry cans. And I'm like, what's going on here? And the women gather and they're telling me we're having to wait 2 full days, 48 hours to fill a jerry can. And the typical family needs 5 to 10 jerry cans a day. So, compute. It doesn't work. And I'm like, what's going on? They said, well, when you drilled a well here, everybody comes.
Because it was the closest one.
It's the only one for a long distance. And so we immediately realized, okay, when you find a desperate place, drill 3 wells. Otherwise, you actually create life and conflict at the exact same time. That's what we were doing. Women who spent 2 nights waiting to fill up the jerry can were going home being beaten by their husbands because they're saying, where have you been? So, yeah, good idea gone bad. We learned a lot there.
Yeah, sometimes our good intentions, we don't think about the full outcome.
No. That's why some people have gray hair and you seek their advice because good intentions can go very awry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about when you first became involved with the water project and you went back to the States and started talking about it. What did that look like for you?
Well, first of all, I'm very mindful of people going somewhere overseas and coming back and being all caught up in it and driving people nuts. So I think, I might have to ask other people that I was wise enough not to do that. I just would tell people, hey, I just had this experience. And I would basically tell them the same story I just told, your listeners here. And it was interesting. It was it was overwhelming for me. I did not expect so many people to say, okay, what can we do? We had kids doing lemonade stands. We had a person put on a 5K, which is on the scale of work is just through the roof. Yeah. We had churches say they're going to give money. We had businesses say, hey, for our Christmas, instead of a party, we're all going to, give. Just we raised $500,000 in a few months without a real clear plan, except that I said, if we're going to help their dream, it has to be their solution. So we can fund it, but we're not going to control it. But I think it really rebirthed in me, Dory, to be honest with you, a belief in the goodness of people. It was remarkable to me how many people respond in generous ways, not just with money, but with time. And that's how we were able to make a difference. And within a couple of years, they had rigs over there and a team, and we're drilling water wells in a very broken country and saving lives, thousands of lives every day.
So all of that came just organically, more word of mouth when you first started?
Absolutely. Yeah. Then then of course, as that starts moving, we start thinking, okay, we got to call this something, so we get some
a name for it, right?
We get a couple creative people in the room and we're all brainstorming. And finally, I'm just like, the people over there were just saying water is basic. And all of a sudden we have a name, water is basic. It was all organic, 100%. And I will just say that we live in times right now where I think there's a tendency to just wonder, are people good? Are they always angry? Yeah. And are they always against each other? Are you on this side or that side? That happened. Yeah. And I think it would happen again today.
Yeah, I like to be optimistic. I think there's so many moments in time in history and our experiences that you think like, okay, what is the trajectory of humanity? Like, is there hope left?
Yeah.
But I feel like we have these moments where you see that, yes, there is, and that a lot of people do care about others. And that sounds like it was a testament to that.
Oh, yeah. I think people connect with people.
Yeah.
They don't need to be sold. It doesn't need to be a big marketing campaign. Just tell the stories. And, it doesn't take long to realize, okay, a mother's getting up at 3 a.m, walking an hour to fill up a jerry can, coming back so she can have clean water for her kids, get something around for them so they can go to school if they're going to school. And as soon as they're gone, she's got to go do it again. Before you go, that's not my life. I speak in schools a lot about our work, and I always ask kids, how many places in your home can you get clean water? And they start listing them and all that. And I said, you forgot your toilet.
Well,
because in South Sudan, the water in your toilet would be a gift. So it's when people understand that there are people that have literally no access to water to wash their hair, brush their teeth, cook a meal, wash their clothes, never mind just a cold drink on a hot day.
Yeah.
I think they connect to that.
Yeah, it's like the emotional level that people connect to, the humanity that they give.
So for me, it was a humbling experience just to watch people go. And there's a lot of creativity that I would never have thought of,
So Water is Basic has a different model than like the typical nonprofit, where you're fostering businesses, you're the people who are most impacted by, the water issue. They're the ones who are having the agency to solve it. Talk about that a little bit.
Part of that's probably my wiring. I see things that are, and I'll sometimes say, this is stupid. Why are we doing that? So, so from the very beginning, I was adamant that this work had to be locally driven. In fact, I will tell you, in the early startup, I told you we raised $500,000. We had to buy some rigs, et cetera.
Yeah.
You're trying to email back and forth with people who don't normally do email. Just realize I've got to fly over there for a meeting. The 42 hours of travel for an hour meeting. And I get there and they're ready. I mean, they're sitting around a table. They've got a list of, and they're like, hey, these are all the things we need. Can you go get them? And I was like, what do you mean? And they started going off, and I just wrote down on a piece of paper $500,000, circled it, and put it on the middle of the table. And they said, what's that? And I said, that's how much money's in the bank, and it's for you to figure out how to spend it.
They were expecting you to do it.
Yeah. That's typically how nonprofits work. It took a while for them to get that. I said, we don't know how to solution this. Now, you tell us you need something and we need to go find it. That's fine. But you know how this works in your context. I didn't live in 55 years of war. I don't know what it means. We have a young lady. In fact, we just sent an email today with a little video about Dorianeh. She's 23 years old. She's the newest South Sudanese staff member. She's 23. She was responsible for a whole family. Why? Her dad was killed by a snake bite last year.
Damn.
That's a common thing. So, if your listeners heard that, they're like, I'm not walking out in there in the weeds to drill a well, but locals are. And so this has always been a local driven vision from the beginning. But I will tell you, Dory, that along the way, idiot me, idiot us, whatever you want to say, we were slow to realize how much water is driven by women in South Sudan. Now, we realized early that we had to insist that water committees that are organized around a well to manage it needed to be 50% women. And the men that ran it didn't get it at first. So there were times where we would meet and say, where's the women? And they'd say, well, there aren't any. We say, okay. And we'd get in the car and drive off. So you call us when you have half the committee are women. And so we didn't understand enough. But as years went on, I just started to realize again, it's women who are waiting at a well for 2 days. It's women who are saying, okay, honey, to their daughter, you're not going to school today. I need you to help me get water. And so girls are not getting educated. And so we kept asking the question, why can't women be the solution rather than just the ones who bear the burden of the problem? And everybody says it just won't happen. This is a very patriarchal country. This is a country where women sometimes call on their knees to come greet a man. Women have very few rights. But a few years ago, we said, let's try it. And we actually started training women to repair wells. And I think that's an important thing for your listeners to understand. We went from drilling to repairing because along the way we realized throughout those 55 years of war, many good-meaning NGOs came and drilled wells because they knew people needed water. No plan to fix them. And a water well is not some kind of special thing from heaven that never breaks. It's like anything else. And so there are over 50,000 water wells around South Sudan that would be giving life to people, but half of them are broken at any given time. By a simple thing like a small bushing or a chain or one pipe, it doesn't take much. But when it's broken, a community of 300 people no longer has clean water. Children start getting sick and dying, etc. That's the reality. So we started training women to repair these wells, train them in business skills, train them how to repair a well. Also, we always do trauma healing in all of our training so that they, when they're out there, can also be talking about how they're healing from trauma. It's a very traumatized nation. But now we've gone from, is it just locally driven? But no, it's locally women driven.
Mm.
The ones who bear the burden are the ones bringing the solution.
Mm-hmm. They're empowered to be able to fix things themselves.
Yeah.
And what I liked about what you shared with me is that you're showing them how to have their own businesses.
Yeah.
They're not reliant on you after they're trained.
Absolutely not.
Things.
No. Well, a couple of things it's important to know. It's still a patriarchal society. We've had some women that have not been able to do the training because their husband said no.
Because they said no.
Stupid husband, because this is in a country where nobody has a regular income. We are seeing women pay for their kids to go to school, pay for their own schooling, building new houses for their family, loaning money to other women in the village. I mean, these women get it. They're hardworking, and it doesn't matter. They're not waiting. So when a well is broken, it could take a year or 2 years sometimes for a well to get repaired, if ever. Now they just call this woman's cell phone. She gets on a bicycle and rides out there. They pay her a fee. She brings in some of the men and young boys in the village, pays them a small thing because they're all unemployed. They help take this apart because it's a heavy, heavy deal. She analyzes the well, tells them what's wrong with it, tells them what it's going to take to fix, and they come together, they collect the money, they pay for that, she fixes it, and a well that would have been not working for a year or two is now working in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Giving life. So yeah, we're a lot different. It's not been done as far as we can tell anywhere in the world. Repairing wells is a new kind of concept, but women doing it is off the charts.
So you said that it would take about a year or sometimes two for it to be repaired before like people were going in and having and assessing it and then doing it themselves within a day or two. Like what was going on before, or why would it take so long?
There are very few NGOs or businesses that repair wells. That's one. The government has done the training of water well repair mechanics and put them in water departments all over the country. I mean, I met a guy who has been head of the water department for 18 years. He hasn't been paid in 18 years. Not one dime. So not only do they not get paid, but they have no parts. So it's not uncommon for us to pull a well apart that's 150 feet deep, pull it up, and to find that the pipe has rusted, and the water department mechanic who has no parts came and took a bicycle tube and tied it around it, and that's how he repaired it. There's just not been a process. What's frustrating to me as an economist is I very much believe in supply and demand. So the demand is huge. Everybody needs clean water. This is not something it's not like going from Coke to Pepsi or something like that.
Yeah.
You got to have clean water. But there's nobody meeting the demand because the economic problems of the country. Though the government has trained water departments, but the government has no money. They have no money, and so nothing's getting done. So we are actually meeting a market, a high demand market, with a simple process. It takes about 2 months to train somebody. They get it really quick, and you do not have to tell women to get motivated. They know in that village where the water well is broken what it means to every home. And they're coming.
Because they know what it means for their home.
I've been there with a well repair, and a woman is about to give birth, and she's had to sit down several times while they're repairing the well. And I thought, she is going to give birth right here, right now. What are you doing here?
And she was still out there.
She's still out there. Yeah, that's women. Period.
Just bad.
That's moms.
Just that. Yeah. Especially mothers.
Especially moms, because they know what it means. And in South Sudan, to be honest with you, you are useless as a woman if you can't produce babies. It's a part of
it's the cultural dynamic.
It's a cultural dynamic. But I do want to tell you, what's fascinating is I've been in a village where a mile from getting to the village, there are people dancing all over to escort us to the village. There are hundreds of people in the village. They butchered a bull, something you do if the president comes. And they are celebrating the woman in their village who's been trained as a pump mechanic. And they're asking us to stay all night and dance and party. That's how much they're understanding the value. And it's changing perspectives in a dramatic way. So we have one pump mechanic. Her name's Elizabeth. She has 5 children. Her husband was beating her viciously to the point of death. And she finally said to her village, I would rather hang myself than stay married to this man. So the village elders got together under a mango tree and sat around and talked all day. And then finally came out and said, we've decided it's better you hang yourself. It's hard to hear and it's hard to say.
Hard to wrap your mind around.
It's absolutely
You go to the elders for
spellbinding.
advice.
Yeah.
And that was the recommendation.
Yeah. Why? Because if she divorces her husband, our village will be known as a place where women can't be trusted to stay married and all these kinds of things. Well, I say all that to say that's a low vision of women. And so to go to a village and have those village elders all gathered around under a mango tree, drinking the local brew, which is a little disgusting, to be honest with you. And we're roasting a cow and we're celebrating the woman in their community who's a pump mechanic, not only for what she now brings as far as new life to that community, but the reputation she's bringing to that community as she goes other places is a dramatic transformation. So
wait, same woman?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now,
South
Sudan has passed a law that 35% of all government positions need to be women. That's a top-down approach. And we know what level of positions the women are getting. But we are working at the village level, at the grassroots level, where I think it's really important for a village chief who's been doing things the way they've been doing them for, to be honest with you, the last 2,000 years.
Centuries.
For them to go, wait, women can do more than birth a baby. A woman can be a pump mechanic and bring life to our community and bring reputation to our community is a great transformation. And it's one of the things that I did not anticipate, but I'm most excited about what we do. Yeah.
That's incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about the story that you shared about the traditional nonprofit model, you come in, you fix like an immediate problem, which there's needs to put Band-Aids on solutions to get people by. It made me think about like having sustainable solutions that can continue and sustain themselves, essentially. It makes me think about Klarna, the Afterpay company. So I was talking to a friend the other day. She was telling me that the founder initially started this so people could be able to afford, the large purchases they need and be able to make it in monthly payments. But now there's like this huge debt crisis on like the individual level too. So he didn't realize that he was solving an immediate problem and then, you're causing a debt crisis at the same time. So hearing him speak later on about regretting that and actually creating a new company to kind of solve that. It's kind of like the well-intended efforts, and then you don't realize like what happens after. I think some of the interesting conversations I've had with a few other guests are you have to think beyond the immediate problem that you're solving or beyond your product and how it impacts the people and after your service is done or after the product is finished. And I think like empowering the people so they can create their own solutions is like a very unique way to be able to do that.
The pushback on that, by the way, is that, well, if they know how to solve it, why aren't they solving it? This is the kind of things you hear. Or can they be trusted? It's the number one question you're going to get. If you send money to some place that's deeply broken and highly uneducated, they're just going to waste the money or steal the money. To which I always respond, good people are good people. So, it doesn't matter what country you live in, whether you're in England or you're in, Colombia or you're in the U.S. and you're starting a business. If you get bad people in your business, bad things are going to happen. So the same thing works in the context of a nonprofit. So, when I say we want to make sure this is locally run, we also want to make sure it's locally run by good people, smart people, hardworking people, people who have good hearts. I think that's key for one. And two is there's a power that comes with being the money.
Yeah.
Whether it's a for-profit, not-for-profit, or somewhere in between, if you got the money, you got the power. And giving up that power, not giving up accountability, not giving up measuring, results, but giving up the power is probably the hardest thing that needs to be done. we work really hard at it. Well, I've had 1,000 ideas a day since I was 4 years old. My mom will tell you I'd bash in the back door with some new business idea. I was going to sell sunglasses. We happened to be in the least sunniest place in America, but I was going to sell sunglasses. And then to be able to go get there, clear example. This is really interesting. So when I had the idea of can we train women, found a few people in South Sudan that I'd been working with, and they said, let's give it a shot. But they said, we have to train men too. And I said, no, I really want to just train the women. The men have had their shot. And they're like, no, a woman cannot culturally leave her village and go 2 or 3 hours out into the bush and come back. It will be, one, unsafe for her, and two, she'll be accused of having gone there to have sex with somebody. They must be partnered with a man. So one of the things, I didn't want to do it. It wasn't part of my idea, but the locals knew better. Because these women would not have a chance. They could not go out on their own, even if we partnered the women together in twos. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we do build. So we actually do it for every woman we train, and we train a young man, and they do partner together. And most of them are in their 20s. What I love, Dory, is hearing. And I ask this question all the time. I'll say it to the guys. So what's it like working with a woman? And man, they're just gushing with the. How detailed they are, how on top of it they are, what a joy they are to work with, how they match up together as a team. These guys have their whole idea of what a woman is and what you can do with a woman has been changed. That would not have happened if we'd said, no, this is our idea, it's our money, we're going to do it our way. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get back to your original question. I think the importance of being on the ground and being local is incredibly important. So I would imagine that this gentleman who started this loan business, if he could have had more time on the ground, would have realized real quick, as we all know, it's not fun paying for something you already own. It never has been.
Or that you feel like you own, right?
Yeah, it's one thing to get a TV. It's another thing to be paying for the TV a year after. Yeah, it's already scratched and you can't find the remote and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So being on the ground, I think you would have heard that more and more and more, and perhaps realized earlier. I don't know. I just know that every time I land with an idea and put it out, I have to do it with an open hand, with the idea of either being slapped down or being adjusted. Okay, this is a great idea. It's never been done before. Let's try it. But he must train a young man to go with it. Yeah.
It takes a certain amount of humility. When you're coming, as the funder of a project, it's like that power dynamic that you said. To be able to say, you know what, they know the best. This is the context here.
Yeah.
And, compromise to make things work together.
I think we know that better in business than we do in the nonprofit world. I would imagine Coke is not going to expand into some small village, or some area of, I don't know, some country somewhere without hiring local people who want to figure out, you sell through these little bodegas and et cetera. Mm-hmm. Nonprofits have a tendency to be a little stupid in that area. Well, I did this over here, so it's just going to work over here.
Right.
And it's foolish. And I think it sets back the work of good profits more than it should.
Yeah. I'm really curious to hear more about your partnership with the businessman who does the training.
Oh, yeah.
Remember you were sharing that his personal story is really what helps him relate to his students.
Yeah. So Dory, I said to you, we train these women and their young men in how to repair a well, but also in good business practices, profit and loss, all that kind of thing. We could have, I actually know a couple of Harvard MBAs who started an organization that train people in business around the world, but they're Harvard MBAs doing it from their perspective. Ivan, who's from Uganda and who was an orphan himself and who lived through the Idi Amin era, has been through difficulty. So he's also African. So he's a very successful businessman in Uganda. And so I called him and said, hey, would you be willing to come and do the business training? Now, he's got to decide. His business is growing. It's the kind of business, if you're away very long, goofy things happen, things start disappearing and breaking down. And he's like, yes, I'm in. Partly because of our friendship, I think, but also because I think he needed that space in his life. And here's what I will tell you about Ivan now. We can't keep him away from training our next group. It costs money, it costs time. But when he gets in that room with those young men and those young women and starts teaching business practices, but with stories and concepts that relate to people in the village, to hear the laughter and to see them get it is fantastic. And I, to be honest with you, all we want is to be successful. I don't care what that takes. And if we need to go away so it can be successful, fantastic. We want to see people having clean water, children not dying of dirty water, and specifically seeing women and girls thriving because moms don't have to spend all their time getting clean water and girls can go back to school. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it takes to make that happen. I'm in. So Ivan's awesome at teaching your business skills, and he has an organization called Jibu Water, pretty well known water. That's an actually organization for your listeners to check out. It's actually a guy in Colorado, very successful business guy, who's working on the water problem of Africa from a business only standpoint. I mean, they've got Schedule C and B investors and A investors and doing all that kind of stuff. And they're actually setting up points of sale of water in countries all across Africa and are very successful at it. And it's been fascinating to see how they function. We kind of started around the same time and they've done extremely well. Very different models, but very effective.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to check.
Yeah, if you go to Rwanda, you probably would have a hard time finding anybody who doesn't drink Jibu water. Jibu. Yeah.
So some of our listeners have their own ethical business, or they have a business that they want to be able to communicate their ethics or sustainability a bit better. Mm-hmm. What are some of your learnings that would apply to a business like that?
As I remind you, I wanted to be a big shot in business, but I quickly pivoted and have not been in the business world, been in the nonprofit world, but I've worked with a lot of for-profit businesses. It's been fascinating to see what I think has been most effective at businesses that I've seen that are trying to do good and communicate that is they do it over and over again. They don't communicate it sometimes. Mm-hmm. They don't communicate it in the best of times. They communicate it all the time. It's part of the ethos of their hiring. It's a part of the ethos of their sales. It's part of the ethos of their contracts they sign with partners. And it's part of what they focus on doing, what they're going to do with their profits each year. The ones that I've been fascinated with and have been most helpful to us are ones that are in the game no matter what. In fact, when we have to call them and say, hey, we're in a tough spot right now, would you like to give? And then they're like, yeah, we're in a tough spot too. But their immediate response is also on top of that. But that's what we're about. So yeah, we'll figure out how we can help out, mm-hmm. whether it's, doing a fundraiser with our employees, et cetera. I think you have to, I'm probably not the best person to get the best answer out of this, but I can just tell you from my own personal experience, those organizations that say this is going to be a part of our DNA in all we do, good times and bad times, are the ones that are most successful at being ethical and doing good.
All the way through, not just the marketing. So when you're hiring somebody, making sure they're onto that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about it from this standpoint. If you're really successful in your business and you go from 20 people to 2,000 employees, mm-hmm. and you're not preaching that when you're hiring, you're going to wind up with a division somewhere else that they're like, wait, we didn't make any money last year. We didn't have any profit sharing last year, and you're wanting to give money to this? I'm out. That doesn't make any sense.
Because that value wouldn't be there.
Their value's not there. So it's got to be woven through everything.
Yeah.
And not just when you said, not just in marketing, et cetera, but also not just in high profit time.
Yeah.
But low profit times. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were telling me that you started just like solving the water problem, mm-hmm. but then you kind of transformed Water is Basic to women solving the water problem. Yeah. What was it like changing your messaging or, because that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. One of our board members is a very successful marketing guy, business person, et cetera. And I believe board members should be more than just board members. We should be in community. So you have to have been to South Sudan to be on our board. You can't be throwing out ideas from a context that's never been there, et cetera. So that's important to know. But after we started training women and started really focusing on this, he sat at a board meeting one day and he's like, we're still communicating like we're a water organization. And everybody's like, we are. And he's like, no, we're not. We are a women and waters organization. And it's so obvious. And we are missing the boat when it comes to communication. And what surprised me the most, and I shouldn't have, but was when we started really talking about how we are now focused on women and women being part of the solution, the donations that came in from women skyrocketed.
But they shot through the roof.
Yes, it did. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, the other thing is the nonprofit world goes through the hottest thing that season, So water was really hot like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it was at the Olympics or at the Super Bowl. One of the big beer companies did a thing where, if you bought a bottle of beer, a certain amount of money is going to go to clean water. I mean, a Super Bowl ad, for goodness sake. That's how exciting water was. But it's kind of lost its excitement. Now, other things come along. What doesn't lose its interest? Women.
Mm-hmm.
Women have been taking it in the teeth all over the world for a long time. And I think most of the world is realizing it's time that changes. And so when we talk about the fact that we are not just a water organization, but we are women solving the problem water organization, it changes the response from people, the people who get involved in what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
But it's also pretty important for us to realize that too, because producing repaired water wells can get boring after a while, even though it's saving lives. But what doesn't get boring is the stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you about Maria when we had coffee the other day, but I wish Maria was here right now because your listeners would just love her enthusiasm, energy, and intelligence. But Maria, immediately as soon as she started making money as a pump mechanic, paid for all her kids to get back in school, and then immediately goes, wait a second, I need to finish school. So she's paying for herself to go to school, just graduated number one in her class at a school of 1,500, and said, I'm going to be a nurse.
Okay, Maria.
Yeah, Maria's on top of it. And when to meet with her, you got to kind of like run alongside her and say, can we talk while you're going?
She's one of those people who's always going.
She is going, but with incredible enthusiasm in her heart and joy in her heart. And she wants to, she doesn't just want to do well. She wants to do well by people as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the exciting things about what we're doing is we're not just giving women the chance to make money by repairing water wells. They know they're saving lives every day.
Yeah.
And it's legit.
And that's the thing about like empowering women, because women, especially mothers, they're thinking beyond their immediate family. Oh, yeah. They're thinking beyond themselves.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying in Africa, invest in a man, he'll go to the city and get drunk. Invest in a woman and you're investing in the village. It's true. And every woman listening right now knows that. Mm-hmm. Every woman listening right now knows what it's like to have a budget and have been saving a little money aside to maybe get something new to wear or whatever, and then suddenly kids' glasses get broken or something. And women invest in their families, their villages, and their communities.
Yeah.
It's the way it is. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's such a joy for us to be actually now focused on women repairing water wells. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like what you shared the other day, that women would be the primary beneficiaries when a new well was built, but now they're the solution.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I mentioned earlier, we teach them business skills, including marketing. So part of that is so we train these women in 2 sections, a month in training, and then they take 2 months and go back to their village and they survey every water well in their area. Well, that's getting to know your market, but also then tell people, by the way, hi, my name's Maria. Yeah, we know you, Maria. Yeah, you didn't finish school, etc. Yeah, well, now I'm a pump mechanic. What do you mean? I know how to repair wells. Here's my number. Your well breaks, let me know. I can fix it. Mm-hmm. And then they come back and they finish their training and they graduate. We've had several women when we first started this get to a village and have them say they charge 15 South Sudanese pounds for a fee to analyze what's wrong with the well. And several villages just said, we don't think you can fix it. You're a woman. So
how do they get over that barrier?
Well, so this is a fascinating part of our story is what we found out women were doing because they have a hard time saying no to saving lives. Okay, we'll fix it. And then they'd say they pay them later. Well, we all know about the buy now, pay later model. Well, now you have a woman who still is not a powerful force in the community. They're being told by the village elders, no, we're not paying. By men, no, we're not paying. Mm-hmm. She has no choice. So we actually had to stop and do a marketing campaign. And we're talking, Simon Butguy, who's our executive director in South Sudan, he likes to say we still live in the Stone Age here. And in a way, he's right. You go to the village, it's no different than it was 2,000 years ago. So when we say a marketing campaign, I don't mean, we did something on Facebook or we had a TV ad, literally riding on little motorbikes and going village to village to village to village to village and then explain
telling people
what we are doing, why this woman is charging a fee, because we want it to be sustainable. Long after we're gone, we want her to be in your community and still available to prepare. And thirdly, it's important for you to understand that the most important resource in your village is your responsibility. Nobody that is coming from heaven, as like people like to say, and fixing your well. It's not happening. You have got to collect fees. You've got to pay her to fix your well. So we had to do that whole marketing campaign. We went from, so our goal was, everybody would collect fees. All these women would collect fees. They would charge for parts and everybody would pay. Just nice, right? I think our first year, we might have been like 25% collecting full fees. After the marketing campaign, the going village to village and sitting under a mango tree, eating mango, 75%. And our goal is 100%. Now I've lost my track of your question because I got so excited about that. The reality of women showing up and not being trusted, and then that they could be a solution. And then to see the village understand that a woman can be a solution, that's one thing. But to see the enthusiasm in a woman's eyes, Maria's eyes, when she knows she's a solution provider, that she knows how the well works. I got a fun story. We have a pump mechanic that went to repair a well, and they said, "Don't touch it." She's like, "Why?" She goes, "Because it's possessed."
Oh. And
they're like, "What do you mean it's possessed?" Well, in their culture, turns out the day it broke was a day there was a rainbow. And apparently in their culture, that rainbow has possessed that. And if you go near the well, it will eat your skin off.
So,
yes, dead serious. I know it sounds crazy.
So not only rainbows are a negative thing, but two, it will, if you go near it, your skin is gone.
Yeah, it'll eat your skin off. I don't know why they think this. So
wait, had it happened to somebody before?
I'd have to find out. Was there a moment where somebody had a skin disease? Or, who knows where this comes
related
from?
It, yeah.
She said, "No, I am trained. I know how a water well works. I know how this pump works. I know all the parts of it." And they were like, they all backed off. She goes, "Stand back, and I will fix it." And she did. Now, I have a little recording of her telling that story. I mean, she is just so amped up at being a solution in that situation and being able to say, "I know something that I can bring to bear in a village that is uneducated and still living by some crazy principles." Now they know, wait a second, there's science to why that well doesn't work, and a woman can fix it. I mean, there's so many things that got transformed there, I can't even begin to talk to you about.
And there's so many layers to that.
Yes. Yeah.
So many layers to that. The superstition, the fact that a woman did it, and just like the mindset shift that comes with that.
Yeah.
And she was a solution, not an outsider.
Nope.
She was.
Yep. Exactly right. I would never have been in that position. This was a well in the middle of nowhere. I think it's just a living example of what doing good. I know that you focus on good profits, and there's so many different ways we could play off of those words, but there is something really powerful that comes from doing good. The stories. I think you asked earlier about how do businesses stay sustainable at being good profits, and how do they? I really probably missed this. I think there's something really empowering to an employees, to a team, to a staff, when their hard work. And let's face it, there are times when we got to be at work an hour early and work 4 hours late because something's got to get done. And it's not fun, and it's exciting to get it done and maybe close a deal. But to also have part of that, people's lives get changed. Kids get to go to school. People are educated. Little children don't die of simple diseases they're getting from drinking out of dirty water. I think it builds. There's a lot of companies are trying to build this whole community that will keep people together.
Right.
We're not going to lose our good team that we've invested so much in. Well, I'll tell you what, doing good with that creates an atmosphere that people aren't going to leave quickly for. And I don't think most people leave for money. They leave for they want some meaning out of their work.
Yeah, I think most people are like looking for like a greater connection to whatever their higher power is, to a purpose. And if you can, all the time, you can't always get that from your job.
Right. It is a job.
Yeah, it's a job at the end of the day. Yeah. But if you can bring that aspect in and have your people feel connected to something bigger than themselves, that's a beautiful thing to be able to do.
It's a powerful thing.
When you were talking about, no one's going to come in from heaven and fix the well, it makes me think back to 50 plus years of being in war and only having help from outside, how much that might impact a community to forget that the well is theirs or that they have the autonomy, like they're in charge of it.
Yeah, they don't have any idea that it's theirs. I mean, it literally was, and here's the crazy thing about it, it literally was a truck coming out of the bush one day because somebody somewhere has decided we're going to go put a well in this area. So, boom, they put in the well and they drive away with their, the name of the organization in the well. There's no even concept of this is how to manage that well, how to set up a committee around that well, how important this well is to you, et cetera. So Simon, again, our executive director of South Sudanese, he likes to say people are, he says, I want nothing to do with anything that is spoon feeding people. Period.
Amen to that.
Yeah, he said, that has been our history, and we won't survive and we won't thrive if we don't learn the opposite methods. And I think that's part of what we do.
Yeah. Completely different from the traditional model.
Yeah. And there's some difficulty in that. Let's be honest. Yeah. We are still a donor-driven organization. Donors like to get stories and reports. They like to know by proof that your money went over there and did good work. So we have to audit books over there, all those kinds of things. One of the main things we have to do is get reports when a well is repaired, which I'd like to get away from. Nobody's sending a report to anybody when the plumber comes and fixes a toilet in your house, right? It's just
done.
It's just done. But we're still in a mode where we have to report to people until we get to a full functioning, sustainable for-profit side. Mm-hmm. And we had to figure that out. How do we get reports? We have uneducated, can't read and write, fabulous pump mechanics. We actually have a program that's on an iPad that they take to the field, and it's very simple. What they click, and it records a GPS setting, it's everything. That's fantastic. Guess what? There's no cell service, so we actually have to have somebody in a truck driving it out, bring them one iPad, collect the old iPad, bring it back, put it on the internet, and it switches out. Now, the fascinating part of that is in real time on our website at any given moment, you can see a well that was repaired today. You can see where it is, you can see pictures of the people, etc. That's fabulous, but that's still a donor-driven model. Mm-hmm.
How do you move away from that?
Well, you have to move away from donors. So that's what we are working on now. If we really do believe that our goal is to be self-sustaining locally, then how do we put a plan together not to expand and just adding staff and adding more revenue and maybe doing better fundraisers, but how do we actually put a plan together to go away over the next 5 years? Early stages of conversation. It's actually a movement within the NGO world. Yeah. A lot of NGOs, if they don't move that way, aren't going to find funding available. But it's going to be hard because that's basically me sitting here with you and talking to you about how exciting this has been over the last 10, 15 years and how wonderful it is to save lives. And it's what I do for a living. And then to say, and by the way, I'm getting ready to fire myself. And that's exactly what we're working on. Mm-hmm. So how do we get it to the place where it doesn't require donors to make it happen? It's gonna be hard work.
It's a big task, yeah.
But it's also, again, it's water, for goodness sake. People have to have water. The reason we're called Water is Basic is because a group of leaders who had just barely stumbled out of 55 years of war, meeting together with ripped clothes, etc., brainstorm what they could do together to best help their country as they became an independent country. And they agreed, number one priority is clean water. We are working on something that demand will always exist. Mm-hmm. So we just have to be creative. And there has to be stability in the country.
Yeah.
That's an important part.
Thing number 2.
Yeah.
So tell me about any trends in nonprofit moving to a more sustainable model. So similar. So you're working on economic empowerment. Do you see that happening within the nonprofit world? Or is there anything that you're excited about?
I wish I could say there were things that we're excited about. It's just kind of a new way of talking and conversing. The millennial goals was the big thing for years. So by the year 2000, the world was going to work together to have poverty and all that kind of thing. And a lot of good things happened. Uh-huh. Now the big conversation is, wait a second. How does this become truly sustainable at a local level? So to give you an example, USAID is a big funder of projects around the world. In South Sudan, they want to give only to local organizations that are doing good.
Mm.
Problem is, there's just not enough of it. It's a hard, but that's being driven by the donor side, and there's a movement now that NGOs, non-government organizations, nonprofits, however you call them, have got to figure out how to move their base to local.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's figured it out, to be honest with you. I wish I could tell you a couple of great stories right now about where that's happened. I haven't seen it. And to be honest with you, people are fighting against it. There are fabulous NGOs that have hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and do fabulous work, but they also have thousands of employees for whom their life is that.
Yeah.
And so to aim to get rid of that is a hard transition. It's going to happen, but it's not going to be easy. Mm. We hope to be a leader in that, to be honest with you. We're not big, but maybe that gives us a chance to be bold.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And be that example.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the way that, like, the mentality about what's okay for nonprofits and what's okay for businesses is, like, completely different. Mm-hmm. For nonprofits, people want to know the dollar that they donate is going directly to the recipient. They're not thinking about overhead costs, staff, marketing. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about businesses, like, all of those things are perfectly fine. Yeah. You want to spend a whole lot to be able to scale what you're able to do.
Right.
And that's something I really hope changes, that in the nonprofit space, you're able to do something more sustainable. You're able to spend money to be able to scale what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And even when I speak to some purpose-driven business owners, they're focused more on, like, the cost or their product, and not necessarily their ability to be able to scale that. And that does take money away from the direct recipient or the direct cost.
And, you know, as I'm thinking about this movement towards local and sustainable, I'm thinking about, okay, well, one of the reasons, I mean, in the U.S. where we're based, lots of money comes from businesses and schools and churches and individuals. There's a context of giving. Yeah. To help make these things happen. By doing such a good job at this, and we have over the years in so many places in the world, we've made it easy for local businesses and schools and individuals to let others do it. So as we move towards the sustainable model, and like we're trying to do in South Sudan, we are actually going to have to market to local businesses and schools, et cetera, that now if this is going to work, it's going to have to be your responsibility. You've got to give to this. You can't expect somebody else to do that anymore. So there's a lot of change that has to happen. Yeah. By the way, there are certain donors that actually know that for a nonprofit to grow, they need to invest in infrastructure, and they will actually only give to those kinds of things. And I'm grateful for those folks, because it's funny. We'll have a donor that'll ask, well, how much money goes overseas? Well, it'd be less if I didn't have to send here and talk to you right now about how much money goes overseas. Well, but I do. And you want a nice color brochure to show it, you know, and those kinds of things. And so anyway, now we got enough to ask. But.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Yeah. So Don Pelota, if you're familiar with him, he gave this TED Talk. I remember watching it when I was in school. It was like 7 to 10 years ago. And he was saying that nonprofits need to operate more like businesses. He said, why is it so unheard of for a nonprofit to ask for investors? Instead of just asking for free money, say that you're going to get a return. So I'm interested to see, like, I think there's going to be a cultural shift that happens.
Absolutely.
I work with the Salvation Army, and they have a social enterprise brand. And so this is a completely new way for them to be, you know, helping people on the social level.
Yeah, and actually there's a lot of pressure now for nonprofits to show impact.
Yeah.
You know, return on investment. You know, if I give $100,000, what am I going to see in return? There is a beauty in that, and there's an actual danger in that. So when we're talking about working with locals, that takes time. So we recently had a group that came to us and wanted to help us 10x our organization. You know, that's all they talked about. 10x. I
feel like that's just so keyword.
Oh gosh.
Like, so what does that mean for, like, your business?
Well, for us, it would be, you know, go from $1.5 million organization to a $15 million organization. You know, you're repairing 750 wells, you're from 7,500 wells. And I was like, stop. Excuse me. I said, I don't want a 10x. And he's like, what do you mean? I've never heard anybody say that. I said, we are focused on making this local and sustainable. We have to expand at the pace that the local people can handle that. We're in a country that was at war for 55 years. And by the way, after they came to peace, they no longer had a common enemy. They started fighting each other. 90% illiteracy rate. The highest rate of illiterate generals of any military in the world. We just can't just 10x. We want to 10x sustainably and in a healthy way. So that's the only downside I would say to a pure business model coming to the nonprofit world is
because the context got to be there.
The context has to be there, and some things take time. It's it's like working with homeless. It's not like you just come up with a new idea and all of a sudden it's just fixed. So that I think that heartbeat has to stay. There are people in need. So when I first started getting involved in water, there was like 1 billion people on the face of the earth that had no access to clean water. That went down to 700 million. And everybody's like, we're solving the water crisis. No, we're not. No. There are new countries that were really healthy and stable that have become unstable. And now they have a water crisis. Venezuela is a great example of that. Very prosperous country, democracy, etc. They've had well-known issues for some time. Clean water in a big context takes a lot of money and time for a lot of taxes to keep that going on. So infrastructure. So people, while people are gaining water, other people are losing water, and then we're gaining population. There's going to be people in need, and I think we have to be cautious of this idea of we're solving. We are doing the best we can to make sure fewer people suffer.
Solving is like the marketing line.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Because that's what sells. That's what gets you donors.
It also gets you depressed.
Just when you feel like you're not. Yeah.
I will be honest, as someone who's worked in this world for a long time, sometimes you can say, what difference are we making? Or when somebody asks you a question, have you solved it yet? And you have to say no. I work in a country that in some ways is just as bad off as it was when it first started. And there's all kinds of things that are affecting that. There's a war now in Sudan. People are leaving Sudan and coming to South Sudan. Well, that's putting a huge burden on a country that can't even take care of its own people. It'll just destabilize things. Inflation is through the roof. As I told you the other day, 100,000 South Sudanese pounds bought a $100 bill, 9 months ago. Now it takes 400,000 pounds. All I can think of is that mother who's been working really hard and, sticking money under the mattress. And as she's sleeping, her hard work is draining away. Those things make it hard for people to get ahead. And so we have a lot of things to solve if we're going to solve the problems of the world. The problems still exist. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind.
That context, that it's not just one issue that exists in the vacuum. Everything's nuanced.
Oh, do you remember I talked to you about one of the businesses that we partnered with. I wanted to bring this up. I think it's important for your listeners to hear because it really moved me. The founder and the partner and the employees get together at the beginning of the year and they talk about their goals for the year, how they're going to expand their market share and blah, 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 and their revenue stream and their profitability. And everybody's excited about their growing profit sharing checks and all that kind of stuff. And they also then say, that means we're going to give this much to the good we do. And they actually do that up front. And it's one of those ways they drive home in their business. This is not just a side product of what we do. It's a core belief of who we are as a business. That's a good profit. I love what they do. And they've grown substantially and their business continues to give more and do more in multiple areas within their community, not just with us. Yeah.
That's amazing. So when you think about what you'll be remembered for, what does that look like? So this can be in terms of, your life in general or with your work with Water and Basic.
Well, there'll probably be a lot of terrible things I'll be remembered for, being an idiot and impatient and all the kind of things. But you actually alerted me that you might ask that, and I've given a little thought to it. And I think I'll be known for this, but I will say I hope to be known for this, and that is, and I do have that we have that reputation as an organization. So I think it will come out that way, but that we truly have opened our hands, have not operated from we have the money, we have the power, with sitting down with whoever we're working with locally and saying, what do you think? How do you think this will work? What are your ideas? We actually go and sit in people's tukals, which is the name they call for their mud hut, and have meals on a regular basis. You could go to the capital of South Sudan and sit with 250 NGO leaders who have never been to a mud hut in their life. So I think I'll be known for I love it. I know and get to know and love the people. And two, and it took me a long time to get women and the burden they bear. You know, my wife often says I'm much more understanding of a young woman with 3 kids now than I was when she was a young woman with 3 kids, right? I'm growing and learning, but I know I'll be known for understanding the burden that women really bear and being passionate about easing that burden and changing that dynamic. Absolutely. If my headstone said he loved women well, and I mean that you have to say it differently, people wouldn't understand, but that he cared for women and understood where their burdens were and did whatever he could to ease that burden, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's true too.
So, as you know, so our listeners will have an ethical business or trying to incorporate sustainability into what they do. Do you have any closing thoughts or any last things that you want to share before we close?
Best way I could summarize or whatever the things that are going through my mind. Because, by the way, I told you I was a business student. I have a business heart. There's all the time I'm thinking of businesses I would like to run and start and do. So I get the business mindset. I do think it's incredibly important as you launch a business that if you want to be a good profit, that you make it a part of your core from day one and figure out ways to make it part of that core. So organizations spend millions of dollars bringing in consultants to drive home the culture of their business. You know, we are creative, or, you know, we are this or whatever. Drive home, we are good. And the best way to do that is to weave it into everything from day one and be prepared for the day when business is tough, profits are low, revenue, you don't know where your revenue is coming from. I have a business. We have short-term rental properties that we help fund our life with, you know, but we give anyway before we know how the year is going to go. And I think that's because I personally, and I know my wife feels this way, we want the culture of everything we do to be about doing good no matter what. And that would be my parting shot to your listeners. That's what if you really want to be an ethical, a good profit, you got to make it part of who you are from day one.
Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. It's been a treat.
Yeah, really enjoyed having you here with us and, you know, telling your experience with Water is Basic and, you know, really driving home that value that it's got to be in the core of everything.
Well, thank you. I don't think everybody that's doing what you're doing would understand and would have given me a space to talk about that. But I hope that it's helped your listeners to understand a little more on that side of where your good is going and then how to weave that together. I think we're only going to make this world a better place if we do it together.
Yeah. So, Steve, how can people connect with you?
Well, we have it on a website, waterisbasic.org. We are a nonprofit, so it's .org. We're on all the social. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and you can email me even, steve@waterisbasic.org. I'm happy to answer any questions or connect with people in any way. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.